Now we'll explore how we can make use of render, get initial state, get default props methods, and then we'll also explore the prop types attribute, which is basically used to validate the different properties that we set in our component. So let's start with render method. So here's a basic example of render method, which you can see over here. All we are doing is returning one element from this render function, and this particular element is basically containing a couple of HTML elements, for instance this input box, and then a set of properties that we have used over here. And when we run this example, the render method will render these in our page. Over here you can see that inside this div container. So if I just execute this in browser, over here you can see all these coming up. So that was the render method. Then whenever the component is initialized, this function that we have over here, get initial state, is called, and we can set different states over here. For instance, I have created one state called sold and set its default value to not sold. And in order to access this particular state variable, we can make use of this .state.sold over here inside the curly braces, and that you can see coming up over here, this course is not sold. So that way we can make use of get initial state method. After that we have get default props method. Now get default props is basically used to initialize default values to our properties. So this particular class or component is having following properties: date, so we have set a default date over here. Then we have set a launch property. This course will be getting launched in April 1st week. We can set the default values to these properties inside get default props function. So in order to override this, you can do so over here. Use the date property and set it over here. So I can say date equals new date, and this way it will override the default value. So now if I run this one in browser, for now you're seeing February 2015. Now if I refresh this, you'll see March 13, 2015, and that is because we just now reset the default value by reinitializing it to a new value. So this way we can set default values to our properties, and in order to access them, it's pretty simple. Over here you can see it, we make use of the props keyword. So this .props name of the property, it will show that property value. Now coming on to prop types. Now we'll see prop types. This one is a very handy property, and this basically allows you to control the presence and or type of properties that your component is having. So for instance, if I want to make sure that published property is mandatory, and over here you can see that nowhere we are specifying the value of the published property. If I run this one in browser, over here you should see a warning. So let's see whether that's coming or not, but I do not see any warning coming up. Now the reason for that is we are making use of the minified version of the React library, and this one only comes up in development environment. So if I just remove this min from here, and you can see that we have the dev copy as well over here, react.js, and then if I run this in browser, you can see that warning coming up over here: required prop published was not specified in courses. So now if I specify it over here, published as false, and run this in browser, now you can see that I have set it to number, which should actually be boolean. So let me change that to bool, and now if I run this, the warning has disappeared and everything is fine. So that way you can make use of these property types and get initial state, get default properties, and render method.